everyone. My name is Nicole Packin, and I am the founder and CEO of Miami Pet Concierge. I'm also your host of Pet Talks, conversations worth having. If you wouldn't mind doing me a favor, in the comments section, we are streaming live with StreamYard. So if you wouldn't mind granting them permission to be able to show your name when you comment or ask a question or simply say hi, we'd appreciate it. Tonight, I am super excited to bring you our guest, Michael Unger from the Coral Gables Trust. As a pet parent, I think this topic is really important, especially in these times. So my question for you pet parents is, if something were to happen to you, whether you became incapacitated or if you passed away, what would you do with your pets? I invite you to come along this journey and learn about pet trusts with our guest, Michael Unger. I'm going to see if he's here, so I'm going to invite him in and see if he's joining us. Hey, Michael.
Hey, Nicole. Thank you for having me here today. I really appreciate
it.
It's certainly a great opportunity to inform all the viewers out there on proper estate planning for our pets and everything.
Absolutely. So I was just, before I introduced you, I was asking our pet parents the major question: what happens if they become incapacitated or they pass away? What happens to the pets? And I know from experience as a pet care provider, a number of my clients over the years have asked me to be a part of wills, but only one has asked me about a pet trust. So I want to know, Michael, what is a pet trust and what is the difference between a pet trust and a will?
Okay, and today's even more of a significance today with there was a recent study that found that there was more than 62% of Americans are pet parents.
Yes.
And they actually treat their pets and their children in the same manner, viewing in the same level of care, discipline, and viewing them as a household member. But so on the simpler side, a will just offers more of a basic coverage, if you will. A will is simply just a legal document that expresses individuals' wishes in regards to property in the event of their death.
Okay.
But what happens with a will is it's not able to avoid probate. And I'm sure you're thinking, well, what is probate and what could that mean to me? Well, probate is a court-supervised process in which the assets of the decedent, the individual that passed away, are identified, and then ultimately they'll pay any debts, and ultimately distribute those assets to the beneficiaries. But the main concern is the length and duration of how long probate could be. And on average, I mean, it varies by the size of the estate, if there's any creditors, or if someone could potentially contest that will.
Okay.
And on average in Florida, if it's a simple will, it could be, or a simple estate, it could take anywhere from 2 to 3 months, and if it's more complex, it's 2 or more years.
Right, so, and during that time, the pet needs care.
Exactly, you need immediate care. So that's where the trust really comes into play, because as a will, once that property is handed over to that caregiver, they lose all oversight or control over it.
I see.
Yeah, versus with the will, you get to maintain that.
Got it. So tell me, how does a trust work? What would one do to get a trust for their pet?
Yeah, so basically first you would have a grantor or settlor, which is the property owner, and then they would have their assets or property, which could be investments, real estate, life insurance, you get it.
Right.
And basically then the trustee comes into the picture, and they're the ones that would oversee the management of those assets. And a trustee could be either a trusted individual, or it'd be better to have a corporate trustee, because then you wouldn't have to worry if that pet were to predecease that individual, because as an organization, you're going to get that continuity out of it. And ultimately, then it goes, as the trustee is managing it, it would go for the benefit of the beneficiary, which in this case would be the pet.
Okay, so let me just make sure I understand this. As a pet owner, I would come to you and say, I want to develop a trust for my pet. And then I would find a person, family member, friend, or even business that would become the provider of the care for the pet should something happen, with an amount of money saved to be able to provide for that pet's care during the duration of its life.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
One key distinguishing point is you don't want to have the trustee and the caregiver to be the same individual, because you're losing the checks and balances of the nature of the agreement.
Okay, and so I was doing some due diligence here
Okay, yeah.
about pet trusts, and I didn't realize that each state has different laws regarding pet trusts. So one that I found in the state of Florida is it true that pet trusts will last the duration of the life of the pet up to 21 years?
No, actually, in Florida, it's the termination of the trust is at the last surviving pet. So
Okay.
if you had multiple pets within that trust, it would terminate at the death of the last pet. Versus
Okay.
there's numerous states out there, as you said, that will only go up to 21 years. And yeah, I'm sure people are thinking, oh, 21 years, that's a lot for cats and dogs, and it is. But when you a horse or let alone a parrot or a tortoise that can live up to 150 years. I mean, yeah, that's
right. So that's what I was curious about, because I thought to myself, well, a healthy, hardy indoor cat. We've worked with cats that are 21 years to 22 years, but tortoises and horses and macaws, they can last 75 to 100 years.
Right.
So that's why I was curious about that. Okay, next question for you I'm curious about is, now I have my trust set up and I'm incapacitated, and I'm going to use Jane Doe taking care of my animal. Okay. What happens if something happens to her? What happens now?
Well, yeah, that's also why you would want to have two caregivers,
okay.
Just in case if you ran into that issue, so that the other one could be quickly implemented into caring for your animal.
And then how descriptive do people get in their trust? Do you actually tell them about the brand of food they eat and the daycare?
Yeah, I mean, that's the benefit of the trust. It can be as simple or as complex as, it's basically up to your discretion. If you want to itemize how many, how often to walk the dog, or, how many times during the year to see the veterinarian. That's the beauty of it, is you can get as specific or detailed as so fit.
That's pretty amazing. Now, what happens if the pet passes away and there's still money in the trust, or there's still assets in the trust? Where are those allocated to? Where does that go to afterward?
Yeah, I mean, that's why it kind of brings up to the point that it's great to, before drafting the agreement, of identifying a remainder beneficiary. So this could either be, you can split it among multiple beneficiaries if you would like to, and it could be your children or grandchildren, or even charities, or charities too.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that would be interesting, that your client comes in and builds a trust for their pet, and when the pet dies, the money goes to their grandchild.
Yeah. I mean, we see it more so in a living revocable trust. Basically, they already have the current trust, and they just simply add a provision within their current trust, or before they're drafting a new one, that would mark X amount of money going to Coco, their dog, and then from there, it's all kind of funnels off the top of the original trust. So it's a easy way to implement it into their plan.
So you talked about wills, you talked about trusts. What is the importance of having a pet trust versus just a will?
Well, yeah, it's a common misbelief that providing for your pets in a will is enough to guarantee their continued care. But you have to remember that wills are simply, once that property has been just disputed, there's no ongoing control or maintenance. So there's no ongoing supervision, and that's the benefit of having a trustee or a corporate trustee, is that you can have random inspections at the caregiver's home to make sure that everything's being honored. And as a trustee, you're legally liable to honor the wishes of or the specific instructions of that trust. And as a fiduciary, if you don't, that's a big no-no. So
interesting. Okay, I'm going to go. We have one question for you so far.
Okay.
The question says, "Is there a limit to the amount of money that can be put into a pet trust?"
Well, that's a very good question. There actually is a Florida statute that deems that the court could appeal a specific grant if they deemed it to be in excess. I don't believe that it has been tested, but yeah, I mean, you probably hear stories of celebrities creating pet trusts, and it's not just for them, and even the wealthy fell victim to improper estate planning too.
Is there a limit legally, because people might try to place money there as a means to move it around unethically? Is that why?
I think it's just, I'm not sure exactly the rationale behind it, but there is one example that kind of comes to mind, and it was with Countess Liebenstein. She actually had left 80 million in a trust to Gunther III, and it was interesting in the language of the trust provided for ongoing maintenance, not only just for Gunther III, but all of his offspring. So it was still it continued to go, but the real success story of it was the trustees that were managing it were able to grow that 90 million to 367 million, and Gunther the Fourth now ended up back then purchasing Madonna's Miami mansion, and I'll tell you, that's one doghouse I wouldn't mind living in.
Right? Can you imagine?
Yeah.
So,
but I think it's also the issue is it could be the caregiver. If it's to excess, there could be an ulterior motive in them if that pet were to pass away or something to falsely replace them. And that's pretty much why it's very important to properly identify your pet beneficiaries, or the pet beneficiaries. And I've seen it getting as detailed as having them microchip so that in fact what they are. So
absolutely. I have one more question. Can you leave all your money to your pet, or does the law say animals are property and one piece of property can't own another one piece of property can't own another piece of property? That's from Christine.
Yeah, I think it just it just depends on that size and whether or not the court would deem that in excess. So
I understand what she's asking, because in the state of Florida, pets are considered property.
Right,
so
right.
When we're traveling around as pet care providers, if something were to happen in our car, they're covered by the car insurance because they're property in our car.
Right.
So it seems like that's an interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
So how does one get a hold of you? What do they need to do to prepare? How would I create a trust for my pets?
Yeah, I mean, we at Coral Gables Trust, I'm not sure how familiar you are with Coral Gables Trust. We're actually the largest privately, independently held trust company in Florida, located headquartered right here in Coral Gables. And, we offer our specialties are trust administration, investment management, and financial planning. So we don't actually draft the legal documents because there would be a conflict of interest.
Sure.
If you were to do that. But we have a great list of attorneys to work with, and we're just a phone call away. So I mean, be happy to email me at munger@tgtrust.com, or call me at 313-770-6585. Yeah.
And I'm gonna put your information up for everybody. So I want to know, what are some peculiar or odd or fun pet trusts that you've worked on before? Anything that you can share so that people kind of get an idea of what pet parents are doing for their pets?
Yeah, I mean, I can't get too specific, but I would say that there's been some interesting ones out there. One comes to mind of I'm not sure if you're familiar with Leona Hemsley, and she was a prominent real estate tycoon in New York City, and she fell victim to improper estate planning with just leaving a will, a $12 million will to her dog Trouble. And she actually left out 2 out of her 4 grandchildren. So there was a lot of trouble within that household. Yeah. So in the main, And the main issue within,
in her case, then, because it was a will, her grandchildren could have contested that and taken the money, so now her pets don't have any financial backing for the rest of their care.
yeah, and that's exactly what did happen. They did contest the will, but Trouble still was able, granted, $2 million out of the original 12, but I'm sure he was still happy. But and then the rest of that was dispersed among her grandchildren, and then the majority was to different charities.
So at the end of the life of the pet, if there is again some leftover funds or what have you, can choose an organization of choice to donate the rest of that.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
But you're going to want to do that beforehand.
Absolutely.
Kind of like I would say, like the key points are, identifying that trustee, ideally a corporate trustee, and just to maintain those checks and balances. You don't want the trustee and the caregiver to be the same. And then you really want to think about what kind of care instructions you would like. Within that, and then pretty much on the remainder beneficiaries and making sure that that any monies don't go to waste or how you want them to be.
So is there anything else that you think that our listeners and our viewers should know about pet trusts? I know that, in today's day and age, pets are becoming family members. I mean, we're going to daycares and spas and traveling and luxury beds and collars and things like that. And I think it's important, really important for people to really think about this topic, because now more than ever, we're hearing stories about people who have died suddenly and their dogs are left in shelters, and they go from living this beautiful life to being in complete shock in a cage. And to me, this was such an important topic to bring up, because my company and myself, I am in wills and I am in a trust. And now that I've learned more about this, I'm going to encourage my clients to build a trust, because that will may not protect them.
Exactly.
And there's only so many animals I can take into my house and people
right.
Yeah. So, I think it's really important. So what else can you offer, or what else can you tell us that you think is really important for pet parents to know about this, so that they can get on it and work on getting their trust?
Well, I would just say, just from planning for ourselves, there's no time but the present to kind of start appropriately planning. And, it could be, developing a living trust. And that's simple that, most attorneys wouldn't charge, or if anything, very nominal to add that, provision within in the trust agreement. So, it makes sense to, kind of tackle everything right then. And you can even go when you're coming up with the pet beneficiaries, you can also make it more of a class and just saying, all the pets that I owned upon my death or disability or incapacity. And that's another way that you could go with it too.
And I would assume that you would suggest that all pet parents update their pet trusts should an animal pass away, they add an additional animal. Do fosters count in this if they were fostering and something happened, or do they have to be the main owner of the animal?
Yeah, I mean, I think if they were fostering, they would want to specifically list, that pet within the document, because that could, there would be some questions that could arise on that. And then I would also want to make sure on the future on the caregiver that, that they understand the dynamics of the trust, and, both the individual creating the trust and the caregiver kind of, come to terms on everything, because we want it all lived up on both sides of the bargain. So
I have a great question from Gail Scott. She wants to know, it seems that the remainder beneficiaries would prefer for the pet to die sooner than later. How do you safeguard against that?
Yeah, well, since there would be remainder beneficiaries, they don't have a control at this point. So that's exactly why you wouldn't want to have a caregiver as a remainder beneficiary, because then they have that interest in there to either to have an untimely death or something. Yeah.
Okay, so you're basically saying that once this is set in stone, the directions need to be followed until that animal dies a natural death.
Correct. Yes.
And that
And,
if you
and we as
will,
trustees,
that will
especially
not
if you have a corporate trustee, we would be making those random on-site inspections with the caregiver to make sure everything is being honored.
Okay. And this is just me thinking, say you have a senior pet and you have this trust and you're the corporate beneficiary and I'm the other one, and I'm pushing for a $10,000 surgery on an animal that may not make it. Do you allow me to make that choice, or will you step in when you think something might not be relatively safe and or good for that pet?
Right. And that's why it's probably beneficial to get complex within that trust document so that you can kind of prepare for, those end of life instructions that, if they were to have cancer or something like that, what treatment and for how long, and really specify everything so, that those questions wouldn't arise. And all,
so that is detailed as possible on
right.
the care from the moment you step foot in the office talking about the trust till the end of life, including what treatments you would want for that animal should something happen to them, and where you would kind of press the stop button on care if needed.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
So I've learned a lot from this, and I'm really thankful that you came on and took the time to share this important information. Coral Gables Trust has already put your email into our feed here, and I'm going to definitely share this with everyone. If you are looking to find out more information on how you can create a pet trust, you can reach Michael Unger at Coral Gables Trust. And I'll get the information out to you. And Michael, thank you again so much for your time. I really appreciate it. This was awesome and very informative.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And again, I'm always here. I'm just a phone call away if any questions arise, and always looking to help. So
I will be calling you regarding my cat.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again. I appreciate it.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.